Okay, so I can't see myself. I don't think. Okay, great. So I was reading in Exodus 11, 12, and 13 this morning, along with Psalm 19, and I was just looking at the standards for the Passover. It just seemed, so important. The Passover is central to the whole story of Israel, and the only people who can eat of it are those who are circumcised. And even the servants in a Israelite household aren't allowed to eat of it unless they're not temporary servants, but permanent servants. They've been bought and made a part of the Israelite household. So this video obviously isn't about servants and slavery in ancient Israel. It's about us who have to be circumcised in heart and who become servants of Jesus Christ. So what I wanted to talk about first was the standard that God sets for us. Okay, if you're not circumcised of heart, you can't partake of the Passover, and our Passover is Christ. So, this is the same thing that you read in other places. John 15 has all these wonderful statements about how we cannot bear fruit unless Christ is in us. But it also contains statements that if we're going to abide in him, the way to do that is to keep his commandments. If we're going to love him, the way to do that is to keep his commandments. There is this standard that is set for us. And I actually want to tie that together with the other reading that was given to me in the Bible plan I'm going through with my wife, which was Psalm 19. Psalm 19 is such a great picture about, it's not just local, it's not just the Passover, it's the whole entire earth is the creation of the Lord. There's power in all of that. There's a whole life that we come into when we come and dwell under the shadow of the Almighty. The whole creation is together with us in worshiping the Lord and longing for the day that we're going to be adopted as children. That is all in Romans chapter 8. But anyway, back to Exodus. I see this standard that God has set. This is what you must do. Don't, get away from that. But I also see that what God says to Noah later in Exodus chapter 34, to Moses, not Noah, in Exodus 34, that he is a God of loving kindness who forgives iniquity and sin to thousands, but will by no means clear the guilty. That is repeated over and over through the Old Testament. And that is the God that we serve. He forgives iniquity and sin. So where's this line? I have a friend from Britain. If he's watching this video, he'll recognize that I'm talking about him every time I get to talking about the standard and what God has set before us and what we are striving for. He's always going, I can't do this. I don't know how anybody does this. This is just condemning to me. This doesn't get me anywhere. But I guess I want to draw the picture that we're always moving towards that standard. And that for us, because we're the planting of the Lord, as it says in Isaiah 59, we're growing at the start. You've seen trees grow up. They grow up as, there are a little couple leaves in the ground, and then the stick grows up that could be yanked out of the ground with no problem, which is why we have to guard our newborn children in Christ. Don't let them stumble, build them up, feed them, let that tree grow and become strong, become rooted deep, and pour out rivers of living water to them so that they can be planted by rivers of living water. Surely those rivers of living water are found in the church. Ezekiel's temple, might be an accurate picture of what's going on in New Jerusalem at the end, but it's certainly a spiritual picture of the church, where we start at the temple, but the river that flows from us, from out of our belly and also from out of our combined belly, it is a river that grows deeper and deeper and more powerful. We have to make sure that river is feeding the young ones and feeding ourselves. We want to be trees planted by living waters that are growing up into Christ, but we are growing up into Christ. We are the planting of the Lord. And so what I want to see all of us doing is being steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, not lagging in zeal, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. Now, all those things can be done by a man like David. You know, David, I read Psalm 18 also this morning. David saw incredible power from God to deliver him from all his enemies. You know, he went from living in the wilderness, being chased around by Saul, to becoming the greatest and strongest king of Israel. And we too, can see that great deliverance. But at the start, the big thing is that we're advancing. I like to tell people, you're right here, right now. God's goal is not that you would be at the end tomorrow. God's goal is that you would step forward. And it talks about that in 2 Peter chapter 1. So in verse 3 and 4, it talks about the incredible gifts that he has given to you so that what follows can happen, which is that we add to our faith virtue. The New American Standard says moral excellence. I think either one's an understandable word. To that we add knowledge, because our understanding of moral excellence and virtue isn't very good when we first become a Christian. We have to add knowledge to that. And to our knowledge, we add self-control, because knowledge doesn't do you any good if you're not doing what you have learned. To self-control, perseverance. Perseverance is just self-control over the long term. To perseverance, godliness. And personally, I can't say I know that that's what that means. Personally, I feel like godliness is what is infused in us when we're knowing, controlling ourselves, and doing that over time, that godliness begins to grow in us, producing the next couple of things, which are brotherly kindness and love. All those things are growing. And the scriptures say there in 2 Peter 1, that if these things are in you and are increasing, they make you so that you're never unfruitful, so that you won't stumble. It makes you strong. And that's where we're at. We are going forward. We are becoming, Christ circumcises us in heart right at the beginning. That doesn't mean our behavior is great. God forgave Moses. He forgave David, especially. His sin was terrible. And you can see in the Psalms him dealing with that sin. Psalm 51, I think the other one's Psalm 38. There's others too, of God dealing with him harshly. But God is a God of mercy. He is helping us go forward to the end. So when I say there's a standard, we have to get there, we have to be going forward. That's what it means to live a Christian life, is to go forward. The warnings are that you wouldn't sit, that you wouldn't be destroyed, that you wouldn't give up, that you wouldn't shrink back to destruction, but instead that you would go forward to the inheritance of life. So anyway, just wanted to hopefully encourage you all with that. If you are listening to this, thank you for doing so. And God give you grace to add virtue, knowledge, self-control, perseverance, godliness, brotherly kindness, and love to the faith that you have begun in.